You're watching News Central now. I'm Darshan Usman. The top stories at this hour. IMF urges Nigeria to fully phase out fuel and electricity subsidies amid labor protest. Chad's presidential runner-up Succès Masra files bid to annul poll result. Egypt to join South Africa's genocide case against Israel. Details of these stories and more shortly. The news begins in Nigeria, where the International Monetary Fund has called on the Nigerian government to completely eliminate subsidies for both fuel and electricity. In a recent report, the IMF warned that these subsidies could consume a significant portion of Nigeria's national income. They project that subsidies could reach 3% of the country's gross domestic product in 2024 compared to 1% in the previous year. The IMF noted that while President Tinubu's administration removed fuel subsidies upon taking office in May 2023, concerns about inflation and exchange rates led to the reintroduction of implicit subsidies later that year. This involved capping fuel prices below their actual cost. The IMF also acknowledged the recent rise in electricity tariffs for high-use consumers. However, they argued that this increase is a positive step, potentially reducing subsidy costs by 0.1% of GDP. The IMF's main recommendation is for phased removal of all subsidies with a focus on social safety nets to assist vulnerable populations during the transition. Discontent is simmering across Nigeria as organized labor unions will be launching nationwide protests today. The demonstrations target the recent rise in electricity tariffs and the government's decision to remove subsidies from the power sector. The protests are expected to disrupt operations at key locations, including the headquarters of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission in Abuja, the Ministry of Power, and state offices of electricity distribution companies. The controversy stems from a decision announced in early April by the NERC. The regulatory body significantly raised electricity tariffs for customers in Band A, a category that enjoys at least 20 hours of daily power supply. These consumers now face a staggering 240% increase, with their rates jumping from 68 naira per kilowatt hour to 225 naira. This change effectively eliminates subsidies for Band A customers, who represent roughly 15% of Nigeria's total electricity users. The move has sparked outrage, with many Nigerians already struggling with rising cost of living. To discuss this further, I'm joined by a public affairs commentator, Dotun Ojon. Hello, Dotun. Thank you so much for joining me.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
All right, beyond the recent electricity tariff hikes, are there any underlying factors contributing to the public's discontent that could fuel these protests?
It's actually not a good time for majority of our people in Nigeria, because it's been a 1 year of burden, of nothing of their own. It's just that majority of people were birthed into this season of subsidy. And the government cannot come on board within 1 year and remove all the subsidies. And these are very, very critical areas. Our entire lives in Nigeria are tied to petrol and electricity. If you ask me, I say why a lot of people actually complain about how much a liter of fuel is being sold today is simply because of the fact that majority of all the infrastructure are actually not working. For instance, if you have a good transport system, you will not bother more about how much they sell fuel, because of course you may not need to drive. So I think these are majority of the issues that are actually fueling this. And now when you come up to say, oh, we are actually taking off subsidy in electricity, targeting Band A, majority of Nigerians, because of the distrust they also have in their government, know that it's actually a way of creeping into all the bands. You may actually say today that you are going to just increase Band A, but look at the percentage. You read it. about 240% increase because you actually want to take out subsidy. And I tell you that any community, any country, any society without power supply is as good as dead when it comes to economic development.
Yeah, Dotun, but what are the possible concessions that the government could offer to appease the protesters, you know, without jeopardizing its economic reforms?
They have made their request, and the request is clear. They are talking about reversal. And reversal is actually understandable. Let's have conversation before decision. One of the reasons why democracy is different from all other forms of government is because conversations always precede decision. You can't just wake up and say we're taking out electricity without engaging major stakeholders. My concern is this: if you really want to build your economy, do not have the mindset that more money will do that for you. And it's so satanic and sad that at every point in time, people think that, oh, the more money we have, the better it is for our people. No, we have gone, you can go back into history. Let's look at 2 or 3 countries that have actually developed economically. You will see their major attention. What are their attentions? Number one is that they pay a special attention to medium and small scale entrepreneur. Most of the things that you are importing today are things that some of these guys can pull off in Aba, in Lagos, in Oshodi. But if you do not empower them, they are not going to be able to do anything. And how do you want to empower them? By making electricity available. And I've said it again and again, you cannot be fighting these 2 wars together. The first war of electricity and that of fuel. Because if you look at the percentage of Nigerians actually connected to the national grid, we are about 12 million people from 200 million people. It shows that their mainstay has actually been fuel. So you cannot take subsidy from fuel and take subsidy from electricity at the same time. It means that you are going to suffocate them.
You actually did say that, you know, it's not about money, but paying attention to the people themselves. Well, can you explain to us further how this situation reflects the broader challenges, you know, of balancing economic development with social welfare in our country?
Yeah, I must make it very clear that social welfareism is national development in itself. Because when you talk about security, when you secure the welfare of the people, it extends to security of your nation. You and I will agree that, you will agree with me, I mean to say, that once there's no security, the economy is challenged. So the first thing you should be able to pay attention to is the livelihood of your people. Because anything that challenges the livelihood of your people will stunt your economic growth. So it's not even a contest. It's a clear mathematical equation that economic equation that anybody can see. So the point I am making is that beyond the big organizations that we clamor for, we must respect the place of small scale entrepreneur. And small scale entrepreneurs are not going to develop if you make them to go through the hardship of not being able to power their generator, if you make them to go through the hardship of not being able to have electricity, if you make them go through the hardship of having to pay through their nose for power that is going to, by extension, lead to production. And I say it, you remember when the founder of Facebook came to Nigeria, he said it, he was walking on the street of Lagos, and he granted an interview that he has never seen an energetic nation like Nigeria. What does that mean? It means that the age group, the most populous age group in Nigeria is the energetic age group. People between the ages of adolescence and adulthood. What do you need to do for these people? All you need, they are already creative people. All you need is to make the infrastructure available for them. And I must tell you that we are making the required money since subsidy on fuel has been removed. What do I mean? There are states now that take as high as 20% more than what they've ever taken as their allocation from Abuja. What have they done with it? So the problem is not making more money. We already have the money. If we do not control access to the money we have in public places, it's going to lead to further corruption. So we shouldn't further burden the people by taking out this electricity subsidy owing to the advice of somebody that is not here, that is not resident here, that does not know the peculiarity of the Nigerian state, that does not know that people have to struggle before they breathe, before they eat, before they move. We shouldn't take their advice. We should look at our own economic reality, look at our potential, work towards developing it as a nation, rather than thinking that more money will cure our misery.
All right, Dotun, right now, as far as we're aware, the issue of minimum wage is still, dragging. They've not come to a conclusion yet. But then, what do you think are the potential long-term implications of, these protests for the Nigerian government's relationship with the labor unions and also the public?
The problem will be the same because there's been mutual distrust between the both of them. There's never been a time, because if you really trust your government, and I keep saying it, that one major thing that the Nigerian government, and it doesn't have to do with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, even the government before him, is actually, do your people trust you? The people do not trust their government because the government has the track record of entering into agreement with labor without fulfilling it. You remember the issue of ASU. We've been going back and forth since 2009, and up to today, the agreement that was signed has not been totally executed. So I think it will further polarize the fence that they are trying to make, and it will create more room for mistrust between them. I come to think about it. If you trust that your government, whatever it's doing, is for your own good, there will not be any need for you to hit the street. And if they hit the street today, there's going to be major losses for government, because anything that hamper with free flow of government activities will actually hamper productivity. And anything that disturb productivity, by extension, will actually affect development. So we are going back to where we're coming from. Years of protest, years of strike, years of misunderstanding between government and labor. And I think this government needs to do more in procuring public trust, in making the labor to believe that whatever it says is actually going to do it, in making the labor to have the mindset that the government is for the Nigerian people. But on this electricity tariff, we may say it's starting with band A today, but before you know it, the fear is that it will just extend to all other band users without them knowing. It is unacceptable that as a productive person, I'll be having 4 hours of electricity per day. No nation can develop. And we must know that a nation of 200 million people needs about 50,000 megawatts of electricity to be able to give people reasonable light for development.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dotun, for joining us and speaking to us on this.
It's always a pleasure.
Now, away from that, the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies has expressed concerns over the low representation of women in governance and the decision-making processes of the country. The Director General of the Institute urged policy makers and state institutions to show more commitment to finding a solution by creating policies that will help reconcile the different roles men and women play in the society. Idong Joseph reports.
Women and men have different needs and responsibilities, and thus they face different challenges in the society. Because of these differences, the need for mainstreaming gender when designing and implementing policies and programs becomes apt so that it benefits both genders. However, despite a framework which recommends 35% of women in all governance processes, their representation has been on a steady decline.
Women participation, inclusion, representations in governance since the advent of democratic rule in 1999 is less than 7%. A challenge facing all advocates of gender inclusivity in politics today is the wide gap between shared values reflected in the national and international policies and practices.
While efforts by the government and non-governmental organizations, including international development partners, seek to increase women's representation in governance, this seems to be eluding all efforts. The National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies says there's a need for policymakers to put in place the right kind of policies that will address this challenge.
I'm very optimistic that NAIS is strategically positioned in ensuring that women secure wider participation in governance by guiding policymakers to be able to make informed and evidence-based policies to enhance gender participation in governance in our country. We need to upscale our skills and competencies in order to effectively achieve this objective. It is therefore expected that at the end of this training workshop, you will gain increased knowledge and awareness on gender concepts.
The UN Women is total in agreement with what is going on here today, and therefore congratulate NINGS and all stakeholders that have contributed to organizing this training.
The underrepresentation of women is no doubt reflected in almost all sectors of Nigeria's society. Policy experts say this, however, can be resolved by putting the right policies in place. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
News Central now returns after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now, tensions are high in Rivers State as a fierce disagreement unfolds between the state government and lawmakers aligned with the Federal Capital Territory Minister, Nyesom Wike. At the heart of the dispute is an executive order issued by Governor Siminalayi Fubara relocating the State House of Assembly to the auditorium of the administrative block of the Government House in Port Harcourt. Now, this order, codenamed Executive Order of the Rivers State Government 001-2023, has ignited a firestorm of controversy. While State Commissioner for Information and Communications, Joseph Johnson, stands firmly behind Governor Fubara's decision, lawmakers loyal to Wike are crying foul. They argue that the relocation is not only unprecedented, but also illegal. In a bold move, Speaker Martins Amaule, representing the pro-Wike faction of the State Assembly, while addressing leaders and political leaders during a solidarity protest at the legislative quarters in Port Harcourt on Sunday, vehemently denounced the executive order declaring that the governor has overstepped his authority by dictating the venue for legislative sessions. As tensions escalate, the future of governance in Rivers State hangs in the balance. Now, joining me on the news is Femi Amele, political analyst. Hello, Femi. Thank you so much for joining me at this time.
Many thanks for having me on this very morning. Good morning to you.
All right. So, yes. Femi, could you tell us how has the crisis affected the legitimacy of Governor Siminalayi Fubara and also the integrity of democracy in Rivers State?
Well, one of the things that you don't want in your first tenure or in any tenure at all is to battle out legitimacy. You can be voted by the people, elected, sworn in into the role of governor, but along the lines of that, one of the challenges you may end up dealing with is acceptance, especially if there's credibility issues constantly being gone after. Now, in the case of Governor Fubara, he had come in courtesy of the blessing of the father, should I say the outgone governor, who is now the FCT minister. But in this case now, his acceptance, or should I say his credibility, has constantly been questioned especially from the legislators. And when you have a divided group of legislators or lawmakers who are trying to make the law around your governance and make it in such a way that there's credence or lack of credence, what you would have is that you would take few steps forward and many steps back. Now, in this case, with the lawmakers, one could almost tell that there's this constant sway between those for him, those against him. They may not switch camps publicly, as one may see, but the politics behind the scene, he has to constantly deal with that. And that is a heavyweight distraction over and over again, and little or no progress. Even the budget is running the Rivers State government on at the moment. There are questions around it. It could be such that it will call into question about what did you run it on, who authorized it, at what point. These are things that take away the credence and the acceptance and the easy steps of governance. The flow will be absent if things are not put in play properly.
All right, so now I think the big question a lot of people would love to be sure about is Does the governor have the constitutional right to order the relocation of the State House of Assembly sitting?
Yes, it does. That's one interesting truth about this. Because what you would find is when it comes to issues of infrastructure, all legislators can do is legislate on the laws, meet, form a quorum. It doesn't talk about, there's no part of the law that I know of that talks about the key location being a building of certain type. Now, the key thing is to make sure that the mace is there, the quorum is formed, and the likes of that. But now, technically, if it's saying a building is not good enough, in which, by the way, don't forget this, the budget is supposed to either run the repair on or to construct a new place on for them, is the one that they've questioned. So if you're saying, oh, there's need for infrastructure or a meeting place, it says to them, oh, but I don't have authority, or you have questioned my authority in building an infrastructure for you to meet. However, in order not to disrupt your chances at leading or organizing yourselves to carry on laws in favor of the state, and making an administrative executive order that allows you, and remember what he said all, but then he also mentioned administrative building. That's the technicality in the press release, administrative building. So one question one would ask is, what administrative duties can legislators carry out in a place or in a building when there's no building? If I would question that. So moving them from a proper location to a location where they might feel secure, they would possibly be able to meet, even though that also has its own politics down the line or political angle to it. It doesn't take away the fact that he's clever about it, and it's within his means to move them. And finally, the fact that all they really are allowed to do is to organize themselves, form a quorum, or meet on what laws they want to meet on, find all the legitimate things they need to have around them, the maze, the constitution, all those things if they're there. But there's no part that gives them room to say they need to move a building or to be in a certain building. It is when the pro-Wike, and that comes under the purview of the governor.
The pro-Wike faction, seem to think that, the governor has overstepped. But then, away from that, what happens to the 25 members of the State House of Assembly, including the Speaker, Martin Amaole, that's the pro-Wike faction, who have been restrained by an interim injunction from parading themselves as legislators? What happens to them now?
One can only imagine what happens in politics. There are more court cases, more court angles, more questions to ask. But the question is, are they going to be able to get a counter injunction from somewhere down the line? Another question one would wonder about is, what are their chances in terms of being able to sit over a certain situation and rule over it? Remember, the injunction comes courtesy of the PDP, the political party in which they did go in on. And there are very clear rules as regards when you're a party member elected, what you can or cannot do, and when you can do it. If you switch parties, by law, it means you lose your seat in the State Assembly. So to an extent, their role is vacant by law, because that's what the law says. Now, by injunction and by putting themselves forward over and over again, what one would question is, all the activities they do during this period, will they be binding enough? What authority will they use to push forward their perspective? Because once your seat is declared vacant, and not just vacant by an injunction, but by the law that says if you're a party member and you switch seats, you lose your seat. So typically, what they've worked themselves into is a situation of more laws to be thrown at the situation to resolve it. But I really doubt if anything they do, or they can make a lot of political moves. It doesn't mean they will not be able to bite politically. They can be strong, they can be furious, they can be very outspoken and in the face of a lot of people. However, down the line, whatever they rule on, will it be binding enough on the governor? Will it even be considered in the state?
But one thing they actually seem to forget is the fact that, it's not all about them. You still have the Port Harcourt citizens, indigents to actually, worry about, and, they're clamoring for good governance. So do you think that the ongoing impasse between the current governor and his predecessor, is affecting the governance and administration of Rivers State? Or would you say that so far so good, the Rivers State governor is despite everything happening, despite the crisis, he's actually doing a good job at, managing the affairs?
You can't do a good job when you're in a chaotic room. That's the outright truth. There's only a measure of the goodness that you can show. If you launch a building, you cut ribbons, or you do an ongoing project, or you sit and make certain kind of speeches, if that's good enough by the people in Rivers, that's good enough. But then you would want to wonder about what happens to things like projects they want to do. What happens to, apart from all the appointees and the likes of that, what happens to day-to-day allocations? What happens to things that it would need to pass through Rivers State Assembly? Would it, in the process of saying, because there's chaos, it will circumvent, I beg to say Rivers Assembly, not National Assembly, would it circumvent the Rivers Assembly and go ahead? And if it does that, that puts him in with the elements of having an autocratic system running in his head. So the people definitely are feeling this. They may not feel it day to day immediately, but I tell you, one of the biggest things about governance is if you make a move in 3 months, if you make a move 3 months ago, it's likely now that you would feel it. If you make a move 6 months ago, it's likely now that you feel it. So every time there's drama and every time there's an impasse for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you would feel the impact in some parts of the state for the people immediately, but some impacts are long-term. So things are definitely not healthy. Not healthy at all.
Thank you so much, Femi, for joining us and speaking to us on this. We appreciate you for your time. The National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons has concluded a 5-day training program aimed at enhancing the capacity of its officials and improving refugee application and management processes in the country. This initiative aims to improve the livelihoods and protection of refugees, providing more support for those seeking refuge. News Central's Joshua Imarai has more.
Nigeria has been questioned over its support for refugees and internally displaced persons in the past. To improve on its responsiveness, the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons commenced a 5-day training program to equip its staff with the necessary capacity. The program also aims at enhancing the capacity of the committees saddled with attending to refugee applications.
So it's very, very important that the membership understands deeply what the processes are like so that decisions are well informed. We are expected to protect them in all ramification, the asylum seekers and what have you. So it is very important that we understand the processes to do that. And that is what informed this for a very particular training.
The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugee, who was represented at the training, assured of the UN support to help the Nigerian government meet its international obligation for refugee protection.
UNHCR is committed to supporting the government of Nigeria in meeting its obligation for international protection for refugees. And the essence of this 5-day session is to enhance capacity of key members of the Eligibility Committee and the Refugee Appeal Board so that when they have claims for asylum to review, they are able to appropriately apply the right principles for protection. They are able to review the procedures for interviewing and assessment have been complied with and are able to ensure that those who meet the criteria for status are granted and those who do not meet are also not recommended for status.
Participants at the training emphasized the importance of law and fairness in refugee matters and acknowledge that the training has indeed enhanced their capacity to perform their jobs.
The essence of the review: 1, you acquire knowledge. Secondly, you can enhance capacity, meaning you have knowledge already, you are now enhancing it by learning new things. And it's the new things we are learning that is helping us to do our work. It may interest you to know that within the past 4 days, we have reviewed five cases that was brought before us.
With UN backing Nigeria's effort, the new training program is a crucial step forward in supporting Nigeria's refugee community and offers a bright hope for refuge seekers. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarayi.
Access to housing in Nigeria remains a persistent challenge influenced by an inefficient mortgage industry, a growing population, inflation, diminishing income, and poverty, among other factors. The housing deficit in Nigeria has surged from 14 million units in 2010 to a staggering 28 million units in 2022, marking a remarkable 100% increase over the past 2 decades. Alarming data from the central bank indicates that only 10% of Nigerians aspiring to own homes can afford to do so, underscoring the magnitude of this issue. Stakeholders in the real estate sector say one way to bridge the housing deficit gap is to improve the quality of real estate practitioners through more capacity building programs. A real estate practitioner, Peacemaker Afolabi, said at a give-back initiative for real estate developers that effective education is crucial for individuals working in the real estate industry. You're still watching News Central now. Coming up, Egypt to join South Africa's genocide case against Israel. We'll bring you details after the break. Thank you for staying with us. Tunisia has reported a 22.5% rise in migrants intercepted on shore or rescued at sea as they attempt to cross the Mediterranean to Italy. The National Guard reported that more than 21,000 people had been prevented from leaving Tunisian shores or had been rescued during the first 4 months of 2024. The National Guard, which also oversees Coast Guard operations, said on Sunday that 21,545 people were intercepted between January 1st and April 30th, compared with 17,576 over the same period last year. It said the interceptions occurred in 751 operations this year and 756 in 2023. Egypt has shared its intention to formally intervene to support South Africa's genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice amid the ongoing Gaza war. The Egyptian Foreign Ministry said in a statement that the move comes in light of the worsening severity and scope of Israeli attacks against Palestinian civilians in the Gaza Strip. It added that the decision was made amid the systematic Israeli practices and attacks that have prompted people to eventually displace and leave their land, creating an unprecedented humanitarian crisis. Countries like Turkey and Colombia had previously expressed interest in joining South Africa's case against Israel. The death toll from a building collapse in South Africa climbed to 20 as municipal authorities said on Sunday that 32 people are still accounted for nearly a week after the structure came crashing down. Rescue teams have been working tirelessly since an apartment block under construction in the southern city of George crumbled Monday afternoon while a crew of 81 were on site. 29 people have been rescued alive so far. Municipal authorities said on Saturday an unexpected survivor emerged after 116 hours from underneath the rubble of the collapsed building. Chad's presidential election runner-up, Succès Masra, declared on Sunday that he has filed a plea for the vote to be void with the Constitutional Council. Masra took action in response to the arrest of numerous party activists who were charged with using falsified paperwork to obtain unauthorized access to vote tallies. Elections officials on Thursday declared junta leader General Muhammad Idris Deby Itno the winner with 61.03% of the vote against Masra's 18.53%. Masra had already claimed victory and warned that Deby's team will try to rig the result. In other news from around the world, Indonesia's Mount Ibu on the island of Halmahera has erupted once more, spewing a massive ash plume over 5 kilometers high. This comes after authorities raised the volcano's alert level last week. Unfortunately, no immediate injuries or damage have been reported. Images captured the dramatic scene, showing a thick column of grey-black ash billowing westward. The National Geology Agency urged residents nearby to wear protective masks and sunglasses when venturing outdoors due to ash fall. This eruption follows a smaller one on Saturday that included lava flows and lightning. Mount Ibu remains on the second highest alert level with a designated no-go zone within several kilometers of the crater. The active volcano erupted over 21,000 times in 2023 alone, averaging 58 eruptions daily. British Columbia authorities say the wildfire had reduced but was expected to increase as the temperatures soar. A major wildfire has continued to burn across Western Canada as firefighters tamed the fast-spreading blaze while authorities evacuated thousands of residents and warned of poor air quality from British Columbia to Ontario. Residents in a town in British Columbia were evacuated, while many in Fort McMurray, an oil hub in Alberta that faced extensive damage from wildfires in 2016, were asked to prepare to leave. Alberta said the wildfire was extreme and out of control, located 16 kilometers southwest of Fort McMurray. It grew significantly over the weekend and was 5,500 hectares in size, growing several folds than what was reported earlier. Let's now join the business desk for more news.
Welcome to Business News. The Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee aims to grant tax relief to 95% of the informal sector in Nigeria. Chairman Mr. Taiwo Oyedele announced this in Abuja, noting plans to exempt businesses earning less than 25 million naira annually from various taxes. The proposed exemption covers withholding tax, company income tax, and payee for their staff. Oyedele stressed the committee's data-driven approach and highlighted that those earning 25 million naira or less a year are already exempt from company income tax and VAT. He emphasized the need to support the legitimate endeavors of the informal sector, suggesting that enabling their growth will lead to future tax contributions. The committee's reforms will primarily target the top 5% of the informal sector, focusing on the middle class and elite for tax purposes. Drafting laws to enact these changes is underway. Group Special Mobile Association GSMA, the umbrella body of mobile operators globally, has said that only 29% of Nigerians have regular access to mobile internet, leaving out 71%. The association attributed this to industry challenges hindering telecom coverage expansion. To address this, the GSMA emphasized the need for Nigeria to establish an enabling policy and regulatory framework crucial for achieving the country's digital transformation goals outlined in its Strategic Plan 2023 to 2027 and the National Broadband Alliance for Nigeria, NBAN. The report highlighted that universal access to digital connectivity is essential for broader digital transformation of Nigeria's economy. It suggested that with improved policies, Nigeria could add 50 million internet users by 2028, but noted challenges such as securing rights of way and a complex tax environment. And finally, East African countries are experiencing a significant shift in their trade patterns with a growing focus on intra-African commerce. This trend is leading to a rise in trade with other African nations and a decline in trade with traditional partners in Europe, Asia, and the United States. Data from the EAC Secretariat shows a 14% surge in trade with other African nations during the fourth quarter of 2023, reaching $4.3 billion. Intra-regional trade within the East African community also saw a 12% increase. This starkly contrasts to a 14% drop in trade with the European Union, a similar decline with Asian countries, and a 19% decrease with the United States. This shift in focus is attributed to several factors. Firstly, EAC member states have a growing political will to eliminate trade barriers within Africa. Additionally, initiatives like Buy East Africa, Build East Africa foster regional production capabilities, reducing reliance on external sources. Furthermore, global disruptions like the COVID-19 pandemic and the Ukraine war have highlighted the importance of regional self-sufficiency. And that's our offering on business news at this time. Thank you for watching. I am Perpetual Fasome Peter. The news continues shortly. Bye for now.
Now let's join the sports desk for more on sports.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, made a notable visit to the Ilupeju Grammar School in Lagos, Nigeria on Sunday. The British royal couple graced the courts of Ilupeju Grammar School, not as spectators, but as active participants. They were guests of honor at the Dream Big Basketball Clinic, hosted by the Giant of Africa Foundation. Prince Harry, the founder of the Invictus Games, and his wife Meghan unveiled a groundbreaking partnership between their Archwell Foundation and Giants of Africa. This collaboration aims to empower and engage young Africans through the transformative power of sports.
It brings people together and creates community, and there are no barriers, which is the most important thing. So myself, my wife, as we walked in, I think we saw that knowledge is power, which is a very, very true thing. And it's wonderful to see each and every one of you here today sitting on this court. I know you're ready to go. And we're going to get those balls going, and you're going to show us how good you are.
We are just so grateful. We're proud of all the work that you're doing. For everyone who helped bring this event together today, thank you. For the media who's here covering it, to expand the knowledge for everyone to know how incredible the work is that they are doing here. Thank you for being here to cover that.
Masai Ujiri, president of the Giant of Africa Foundation, praised the royal couple for their dedication to inspiring Africa through sports.
To the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Prince Harry, Princess Meghan, this is such an honor, incredible honor for us to welcome you here. And not only back to Africa, but to Nigeria. Nigeria is the heart of Africa. We all know that. Yes. When Nigeria moves, Africa moves, right? We are so proud to welcome you here, for you to take this time and come and do all what you guys are doing. We have an unbelievable partnership because everything they do is the same thing we want to do with Giants of Africa, which is unite communities, build young children, uplift them, give them opportunity, and ours is through sports. So with this unique partnership, the Archwell Foundation is partnering with us, donating to build another court like this in Abuja. So God bless you. God bless you, Harry. God bless you, Meghan. Thank you. Thank you to your foundation. Thank you for everything you do.
The Duke and Duchess wasted no time getting involved. Prince Harry eagerly joined the players on the court, showcasing his basketball skills and encouraging the young athletes. Their visits also included a heartfelt interaction with wheelchair basketball players, where they took the time to learn each other's name and story. The principal of Ilupeju Grammar School extended a warm welcome, emphasizing the importance of such initiatives in nurturing talent and fostering community spirit.
We are truly grateful for your continued support and encouragement as we embark on this exciting journey of learning and growth during the Giant of Africa Basketball Clinic. Let us embrace the opportunity before us with enthusiasm and determination. Together, let us strive to make the most of this invaluable experience, both on and off the court. To all our guests, volunteers, especially our students, I extend my warmest thanks for your presence here today. Your support and participation are deeply appreciated, and I have no doubt that together we will make this event a resounding success.
The visit holds special significance as it marks the couple's first international tour since stepping back from their royal duties in 2020. Their arrival in Nigeria underscores their continued commitment to global causes and partnerships.
And that's all at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of our top stories. We told you that IMF urges Nigeria to fully phase out fuel and electricity subsidies amid labor protests. We also told you that Chad's presidential runner-up, Sukse Masra, files bid to annul poll results. Finally, you heard that Egypt to join South Africa's genocide case against Israel. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Darshan Usman.